day to each and everyone. We are now on the 2021 International Multidisciplinary Research Conference, Global Leaders and Educators Award, organized by the Beyond Books publication. I'm your today's presenter, Sheila Marie F. Castillo. My thesis title is The Relationship of Competencies and Teaching Strategies of Alternative Learning System Implementers on Students' Achievement of Selected District in the Division of Bulacan. I came out to this thesis title because I'm one of the ALS implementers in the division of Bulacan, and it's very alarming that there's a huge downfall of the number of passers, not only in the division of Bulacan but nationwide, based on the result of the 2016 accreditation and equivalency test held in the year 2017. And this study found out if there's no significant relationship between competencies and teaching strategies of ALS implementers on students' achievement of selected district in the division of Bulacan. So let's proceed to the background of this study. Quality education is one of the challenges of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, on Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. In response to this challenge, the Department of Education, or DepEd, promotes lifelong learning and equalizing opportunities for all Filipinos by implementing the new system of education, which is the K-12 program. This is to provide sufficient time for mastery of concepts and skills, develop lifelong learners, and prepare graduates for the four exits. And these are the tertiary education, middle level skills development, employment, and entrepreneurship. Based on the statistical data report of DepEd on the survival rate in the Philippines, the number of out-of-school youth, children, and adults became continuously progressing. In response to the basic learning needs, the Department of Education conceptualized program, which is the alternative learning system. ALS is a parallel learning system that provides a practical option to the existing formal instruction when one does not have or cannot access formal education in school because of different circumstances like employment, early pregnancy, broken family, financially challenged, rebel, and many more. ALS is, ALS is a substitute or alternate, especially those learners living in depressed, deprived, and underserved communities. This program includes both the non-formal and informal sources of knowledge and skills. The program only requires learners to attend learning sessions based on the agreed schedule between the learners and ALS teacher, and the method and practice of teaching implied here is andragogy or adult learning. And of course, after completing the ALS program by the learner, he or she must take and pass the Alternative Learning System Accreditation and Equivalency Test, or ALS A&E test, to have a diploma. And this diploma is one of the requirements for employment. Every Filipino who is job seeker failed to get the job that they need were applying for. Because basically, a person who holds a diploma has a chance or has an edge to get hired and employed, and those who have not was left behind. Based on the rank list of districts in the division of Bulacan of the result of the 2016 ALS accreditation and equivalency test, it was found out that there were districts that have the lowest number of passers, meaning to say there were learners who haven't yet their diploma that will be using for their either the four exits of the K-12 curriculum. It also presumed that these districts have to improve their teaching competencies in effect to the achievement of the learners. The number of passers serves as basis whether the ALS program is fully implemented in a particular community and eradicate the number of OSY, children, and adults, and also an implementer's reflection as a teacher. And to determine the relationship between competencies and teaching strategies of ALS implementers to students' achievement, more specifically, this study attempted to answer the following questions. And these are what are the levels of teaching competencies of ALS implementers in terms of the knowledge of the learners, learning and teaching process, assessment of learning, ALS curriculum, and managing learning environment. Number two question, what achievement is attained by the learners as evidenced by the result of 2016 ALS accreditation and equivalency tests. Another one, is there any significant relationship between level of teaching competencies and learners' achievement at the accreditation and equivalency test? So now, let's proceed to the significance of the study. This research study will be greatly beneficial to these groups. Number one, Department of Education. This will help to increase the performance of the school because their teachers become globally competitive in providing quality education. It is also their quick response to the Sustainable Development Goal number 4, the quality education target by year 2030. In the part of ALS implementers, the ALS implementers may improve their teaching learning process to provide quality education for the learners. Being competent and creating strategic planning with diverse learners and learning needs will produce a 21st century and globally competitive learners. In the part of students or learners, the learners may participate actively because the teacher meets their learning needs, and they will be encouraged to finish their studies. When students have completed elementary and junior high school through ALS program, they can now choose freely in the four exits: tertiary education, middle-level skills development, employment, and entrepreneurship under K-12 curriculum. Graduates will have a lifelong opportunities for all. In the part of the parents, they will help or they may help to encourage their out-of-school children to pursue their education through alternative learning systems. This will serve as their turning point to lessen the time spent in school and have their diplomas for a short period of time. For the future researchers, this study may serve as reference for the future studies that can help in the implementation of the alternative learning system program of the Department of Education. So let's proceed to the methodology. The method of research used was the descriptive correlational survey method of research because it is suitable to current issues or problems through a process of data collection that enables to describe the situation more completely. This method involves all the collection of data directly from the respondents. It is familiar and common method of research that is applicable to a wide variety of research questions. This is useful in obtaining the relationship of teaching competencies and students' achievements. Descriptive correlational research was designed to determine whether a relationship or association exists between two or more variables. It is used in predicting the level of one variable based on the knowledge of the other variables. The population of this study consisted of 374 of ALS A&E test passers of Cluster 2 in the division of Bulacan for calendar year 2016. This was chosen cluster district because it has a large number of test passers among other cluster districts. And then sample size was distributed to each district based on Sloven's formula with a total number of 193 respondents. The table 1 shows that the cluster 2 has 6 districts with 374 ALS A&E test passers. 193 out of 374 served as the respondents of the study. The sample size was computed by 100 divided by 193 multiplied by the population of test passers by district. The sampling technique employed was simple random sampling. It is a subset of a statistical population in which each member of the subset has an equal probability of being chosen. It is also meant to be unbiased representation of a group. For the description of the respondents, 193 respondents of the study were selected from 6 districts of Cluster 2. The types of the learners of the study were out-of-school youth, indigenous people, reformists, and detainees. They were the ones who can give feedbacks on competencies and teaching strategies imposed by their teachers to answer the problem posed in this research study. For the research instrument, surveys represent one of the most common types of quantitative research. The survey questionnaire used in this study is a researcher-made questionnaire. That was adapted from the thesis study Competencies of Alternative Learning System Implementers of Santiago G. That was 2015. It is composed of 5 competencies of ALS implementers, namely the knowledge of the learners, teaching learning process, assessment of learning, ALS curriculum, and managing of learning environment with 9, 14, 10, 9, and 28 sub-questions respectively. Since it's a researcher-made questionnaire, a validation of the tool used was done by the 3 experts, and these are a linguist, ALS district supervisor, and the ALS education program supervisor of Bulacan. This tool also runs for pilot testing. I submitted a request letter to the Office of the Schools Division Superintendent asking for permission to float questionnaires and gather data from 30 ALS learners who serve as respondents. For data gathering procedure for pilot testing, I met the respondents with the assistance of the ALS implementers. During pilot testing, I administered the survey questionnaire to 30 ALS learners of Timoteo Policarpio Memorial Elementary School at Milian Norzagaray, Bulacan. The respondents answered the survey questionnaire by putting a check in the column which corresponded to the scale of 54321 with adjectival equivalent of very competent, competent, moderately competent, slightly competent, and not competent, respectively. I used the 5-point Likert scale to interpret the quantitative results of the survey in terms of the average weighted mean. It is used to collect data from 193 respondents of the study. The result of pilot testing was no significant relationship on teaching competencies to students' achievement. After pilot testing, another data gathering procedure for this study. I submitted a letter asking for permission to conduct the study, float a survey questionnaire, and gather data needed for the research in the division office signed by the thesis advisor, district supervisor, and schools division superintendent. Then, coordinated the ALS implementers of selected districts to meet and conduct the survey. The researcher administered the adopted questionnaire to the respondents and gave another time to answer and accommodate their queries when needed. When the data needed already gathered, the researcher tabulated and submitted to the statistician. The data are summarized and treated with the use of statistical package for social science software in order to present them meaningfully and to facilitate their analysis. And the analysis was done using the following statistical tools: the weighted mean and the Pearson R correlation. Weighted mean is to identify the relationship of variables affecting students' achievement and outcomes. Basis for proposed program for learning enhancement, the weighted mean was used as a measure of the central tendency of the extent of the level of teachers' competency encountered by the respondents in the Division of Bulacan. For Pearson, our correlation is to determine the relationship between the competencies and teaching strategies of ALS implementers on students' achievement. Pearson R correlation is the most widely used correlation statistics to measure the degree of the relationship between linearly related variables. So let's proceed to the research ethics. All information in this study follows the research ethical standards in terms of rights and proper citation, accurate and honest reported data results, methods, procedures, and publication status, respect the confidentiality and privacy of the respondents, and follow informed consent rules. For findings and conclusion, these are based on the tables presented in this study and answer the questions from the statement of the problems mentioned earlier in the background of the study in terms of number 1, competencies and teaching strategies. So we have here sub-questions for 1.1, knowledge of the learners. So as you can see, there were statements rated very competent and competent. And for general weighted mean, the result here is very competent. Same with the other competencies like teaching learning process, another one, assessment of learning, the ALS curriculum, and the last one, the managing of learning. Same with other competencies, these are rated very competent and competent. For number two, right, for number two, let's wait for number two. All right, for number two, learners' achievement as evidence by the result of the accreditation and equivalency test. It is evident that overall only in the frequency of 55, test passers did not meet the expectation of the learning strands. But the majority of the respondents obtained satisfactory or 54 and fairly satisfactory that is 41 for the frequency, fair satisfactory 35 and outstanding is only 8 or 4.15%. There were a huge number of test passers did not meet the expectation in the learning strands. For number three, based on statistical data results with regards to the relationship between teaching competencies and students' achievement, the data indicate that all strands such as scientific literacy, Filipino understanding of civil society, English and life and career, which is greater than the level of significance of 0.05, which implies that in terms of the teaching competencies and students' achievement and the assessment of the respondents shows no significant relationship when grouped them according to the result of the 2016 ALS accreditation and equivalency test. Overall, respondents have the same assessment of the relationship of teaching competencies and students' achievement when they are grouped according to the result of 2016 ALS accreditation and equivalency test. Based on the findings, these are the conclusions. Number one, the ALS implementers manifest competence in the aspects of knowledge of the learners, ALS curriculum, managing of learners, assessment of learning, and teaching learning process, but there is still room for improvement as reflected on the data gathered from the survey. Number two, the overall analysis on students' achievement as evidenced by the result of 2016 ALS accreditation and equivalency test of Cluster 2 that out of 193 passers, there were 55 got the lowest passing rate even if the ALS implementers were very competent based on the result of the survey given to the respondents. So the ALS implementers used the old and existing curriculum, which is basic curriculum or the basic education curriculum. But the content of the exam was aligned to the K-12 curriculum. It shows that the content of the exam was not parallel in the ALS curriculum. That was the reason why DepEd Memorandum Number 76 Series of 2018 entitled Change in the Passing Score of the 2016 ALS Accreditation Equivalency Test for from 75% to 60% was being issued by the department. And lastly, overall, the teaching competencies have no significant relationship to students' achievement based on the result of 2016 ALS accreditation and equivalency test as tabulated according to the assessment of the 193 respondents. And with that, thank you so much and God bless us all.